Zone focusing, what is it and what do you do with it? That's the subject of this video. I'll talk about how to set up the camera for it, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you can use the technique. So let's get cracking, shall we? Hi, welcome to Max Memos. I'm Max and I'm an urban photographer in Gothenburg, Sweden. In this channel I aim to talk a lot about urban photography, how to do it, what it is, and I want to do little guides like this one that hopefully will help you become a better photographer too. Zone focusing can be a very useful technique in busy environments because it removes a lot of steps from your normal photography. Sometimes you're in a hectic environment like this one here at Kungsportsplatsen in Gothenburg, and you only have a moment to whip out your camera to capture a subject. In that situation you can use this technique, zone focusing. What that means is that you set your focus point in advance and then you choose a specific aperture in order to get a specific depth of field. Zone focusing removes all automation from your camera, and what will determine if you get a shot or not is your reaction time, not delays due to autofocus calibrations or camera operations or something like that. Zone focusing is about exploiting the feature that the lens has a depth of field at any given aperture. You could say that if you set your aperture, you're setting up a zone within which everything is in focus. The problem is that this zone changes all the time with each exposure, and the technique I'm talking about removes the camera's ability to change the zone. It's manual exposure plus in a way. There are two things you need to change. First, you need to change how the shutter button works. You don't want the camera to use the autofocus every time you press the shutter button. Second, you need to set up a means with which you can focus your camera using the autofocus. It's just that you shouldn't use the shutter button for that. Your camera should have the option to change the shutter button behavior, and many cameras have a back button that many photographers set to be their focusing button. On my Panasonic Lumix G80 there are two settings that I need to change to do this. Both are inside the custom menu settings of the camera. First I go to an option called the Shutter AF. That means shutter autofocus and not something rude. There are only two options there if I enter the Shutter AF, on or off. I set the Shutter AF to off, and now my camera won't autofocus when I press the shutter button. Next there is an item called AF/AE lock. If I enter that settings I get a list of options. I choose the last item in that list, AF on, and now I've set the G80 to focus the camera when I press that button. Separating the act of focusing from the act of taking a picture is actually a good thing in itself. So if you leave back focusing on, focusing becomes a deliberate act on your part, and then you can switch instantly between zone focusing and normal camera operation without having to change menu settings. That's all well and good, I hear you say, but what do you use it for? Like I said at the beginning, one thing it's useful for is speed shooting, when you don't have the time to compose and focus because you either get the shot this instant or you won't get the shot at all. When you're in a busy city street or maybe in the serene countryside like here and lots of things are happening at once, then zone focusing is useful. Right now a rare bird never before seen in these parts could explode from behind those trees like Roadrunner from the comics, and all I'd have to do is aim the camera at the bird and press the shutter. I don't need to raise it to my face, I don't need to look at the back screen, I just twist the lens toward the bird and press the shutter and I will have a picture of the bird, if it's in the zone then. I showed you how to set up a Lumix G80 or G85 to do zone focusing, but if you have a different brand of camera or a later Panasonic camera, the steps should be the same. I know for a fact that both Nikon and Canon cameras allow you to stop the camera focusing when you press the shutter button, and both brands let you assign a back button to do focusing. You just have to consult your manual and see the exact setting you need to change to achieve those things. I have no doubt that Fuji and Sony and Olympus allow for that too. Like I said, consult your manual to find out how to change the shutter behavior and switch focusing to a back button. When you've done that, you need to set up the zone focusing in the world, and that's very easy to do. You just need to focus on something that's at a suitable distance from the camera. Then you need to set the aperture to a value that gives you a specific depth of field.
When I decide to do sun focusing, I tend to put on a wide-angle lens like the Olympus 17mm f1.8 or the Leica Summilux 12mm f2.0, which have full-frame equivalent fields of view of 35 or 24 respectively. If you have the G80 or any Panasonic, the 12 to 60mm kit lens is great for this at the widest angle. Right now I have this Panasonic 25mm f1.7, which gives a full frame field of view equivalent to 50mm. That is actually too narrow for my taste, but it's what I have on me when I shot this. With a wider angle lens like the Olympus or the Leica, you point the lens at the subject and press the trigger, and if the subject is in the preset focus zone, the subject will be sharp. You pay for the speed by having to work more in post. You often need to straighten the image and you need to crop it to compose it better. With a wide lens that's easier to do than with a tight one like this 25mm. The danger of using a tight one like this one is that you could cut off the head of the subject or cut off a leg or something. The risk is that you don't get all of the subject in frame. With this 25mm you often need to put the focus point further away from the camera than with the wide angle lens, and it can become more difficult to judge distances with a narrower angle lens.